Welcome to the kind of back end version of this video. This is where we discuss what we're going to do, and you can follow along with the experiment if you want, and that would be really fun. And I might even share this sheet with you so you can create your own, capital success experiment, and we can aggregate our results to see what happens. But essentially, the experiment works like this, okay? So underneath here, we have the actualizer assets, right? And we have the asset usefulness. This is very important. Essentially, what the actualizer asset is our environment. So my environment here, it's looking kind of messy, but it's not too bad. So how would I measure the effectiveness of this environment on my purpose capital, right, that we're going to use? How do you measure the effectiveness of my environment on that? Well, you could say that your environment basically creates your focus. Everyone knows, as far as we know, and this is also very arbitrary from my experience. So you have to excuse that. It's not really, the idea here is that with the environment, this mess translates to my inner environment, and so my focus would be less. So that's the big thing here, is that our environment translates to our focus. So all of these utilities or usefulness of the assets, these translate into, with practice, we want to attract things in the future. We want to practice our yoga to attract peace. We want to practice our yoga or practice our weight training to attract the opposite sex or to attract success and whatever. That's the idea. So the idea here with attraction is that it attracts our tribe, right? So the idea here is that essentially we use the environment and we measure the usefulness or the utility that we get from whatever the actualizer asset is. So that's the first part, okay? The second part is that we now need to incorporate these aspects into the environment. So we know that if these are working together, these actualizer assets will work even better together. They'll synergize, right? So if we have just one online, it'll be 1. If we have 2, it'll be 11. And if we have 3 online in an environment, it'll be 111 and onwards. So they synergize to make emergent success. So essentially what we're going for here is that we have a few things here. So we have a couple aspects of the aspects here. The incentive, the aspect incentive, the aspect satisfice, and the aspect measurements. So excuse any spelling mistakes. I didn't check it. Okay. But essentially what this is that these are the names for the aspects. They're arbitrary. The aspect's incentives are just like the asset usefulness. And stick with me. I know it's, wordy. But essentially, the aspect incentives are they're like basically the process that these guys go through to get what they want, which is the satisficer. So I know this is really complicated, but essentially this is a person, you could say creative Eric uses flow states to achieve a state of flow. I know it's obvious, but a networked Eric focuses on pro-social states to get woke states. Or a physical Eric focuses on avoiding hurt and avoiding loss to get security. Now, the idea here is that these might change, but the measurements we can use to measure whether these have gotten satisfied, these guys satisfies this through this. How we figure out if this worked with our habits is by measuring these. So if we measure the aspect measurements, okay, if we measure tripped me out there. If we measure the strength of our boundary, then we can figure out how satisfied the physical self is through security. So if he feels secure, right, you can say I feel secure, but over time it kind of naturalizes and you don't realize how secure you feel compared to what you were before you started the habit, right? So essentially what we're going for is we have to measure how strong is our boundary. Okay, how strong is our internal boundary? So if we have our environment, right, how strong is the strength of our boundary of our environment? Okay? How strong is the strength of our environmental boundary? And that will tell us how secure we feel in our environment, and it'll tell us how online the physical self is. Okay? So essentially, why the strength of the boundary? Well, these are all chosen because of the incentives. Stick with me, this is almost over. It might be really interesting. It might be really dry. But this is essential to get the experiment underway. So essentially, hurt and loss, right, are essentially, hurt is pain entering your body, or your body, and loss is pleasure leaving your body. What your body is due to your psychological boundary. So if we can measure our boundaries, our boundary conditions that we have within these assets, then we know how much we have avoided hurt and loss, right? So I hope this makes sense, but this is true for all of these, as far as I know. Getting social status and social value, we can figure that out by our social feedback. Getting an accurate prediction of models and our understanding can be understood by how our models work. Do our models, whether they be business models and status, or our, environmental models, or the way we practice our kind of, practice models, so like how we structure our day, right? If those work and they're working and they're effective at what they plan to do, then we can check that off. We can mark that as an effective thing. Hopefully we can get this really quantitatively so that there's no kind of doubts about what they all mean. And hopefully these will represent how online these are. And when we make habits in this section, right, in all of these over time, and we measure how effective they are at creating focus in our environment, we can understand how these aspects of ourselves, when they are coming online in agreement and synergy, how they synergize and create an emergent success, a really exponential success, 1,000 and 1,100 success in all of these actualizer assets, which we then focus translating into our purpose when it comes time for our excitement to manifest. So brothers and sisters, that's all I got for you today. I hope that made sense. I have a lot of excitement for you in the future, and who knows where the world will take me in the next little bit. As an aside, I believe that in times like this, when there's so much being on the line, like all the stuff I'm doing, and so much pressure at the same time, it's like a diamond cooker. It makes us into a strong person, right? But at the same time, there's such an element of trust and faith in all of this that we need to really maintain if we're going to really make it, and if we're going to really take us to the next level. Because I could forget this and say, oh, it's not going to work, and then I just go back to whatever I was doing when I was, when I was a kid, and we don't make any progress in our lives. Or I can say, all right, universe, show me what you got in a good way, please, God. But who knows, right? And so we gotta have faith in the universe, and it's gonna be a fun ride, and I hope you're there to join me. So, brothers and sisters, much love, and I'll see you tomorrow for our next post on Capital Success.